Tell you why Walker Little needs to come up big in 2023 and go over the schedule. I'll do all that here in just a second on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for joining me, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, for another episode here on Locked On Jaguars. We're at your team every day, and we thank you for making us your first listen. Quick reminder that wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you go check in every day so you don't miss an episode. And I'm going to remind you that our YouTube page, you can subscribe for free. Make sure you hit that like button, please, and check me out on YouTube. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NFL60 and use code NFL60 for 60% off plus free shipping. We'll put somebody on the spotlight today, and in a good way. Walker Little, he has to play big this year in order. Yeah, and I know it's a play on words, and it ain't coming across all clever, but little, big. Yeah, he's a little big. Walker Little has to play huge this year for the Jaguars for a number of reasons. One, because it's his time. Developmental wise, this is his third year in the NFL. He missed like 2 consecutive seasons before he made it to the league, so therefore he had some work to do. You can't, especially those trench guys. It's hard enough for offensive linemen to learn every day how they have to deal with great players every single down. You don't get a break in the NFL, and the action is fast. The game is fast. And you really hear a lot of folks, defensive backs included, quarterbacks, everyone always talks about the speed to the game. We think sometimes because linemen are in a confined space that they don't have adjustments. I would argue that the adjustments that they have to make are probably not only being underplayed, but they're really, really being underplayed because there's a lot of moving parts. And if you've ever gone to a practice, you see and stood behind a team in the NFL, not the high school or college, and even that, there's a jump between high school and college. But when you watch an NFL, you really realize just how fast and how good and how strong guys have to be, play after play after play. He looked really, really good last year. From what I saw of him in training camp, his body, he had changed. It looked like he had lost weight, but he wasn't skinny. He was just some of that baby fat was gone a little bit, and he really, really did. He worked extremely hard. Now he was in a battle with. I wouldn't necessarily call it a battle. I think that's being overplayed a little bit, but he was in a competition with Jawan Taylor, who we know left and signed an $80 million deal with the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know that he was ever a threat to win the job last year versus him, but I do know that he played well. And I think some of it was they were wondering whether Jawan was going to be healthy because Jawan was nursing an injury, but he ended up being fine, and Walker Little ended up playing at the end of the year at left tackle when Cam Robinson was hurt. One of the things that I'm really, really curious about, like what has really changed since last year. And what I mean by that is there was some talk with Doug Peterson this year in offseason where they asked about Walker Little. He said, yeah, got to be ready to go. We could play him at tackle, or we could slide him down to guard. So they've recognized that versatility since the season ended. I wonder, did they recognize that when Ben Barch went down? Because when Ben Barch went down, they put in Tyler Shatley, and then they traded for Cole Van Lannon. I never saw Walker Little line up at guard last year. So I'm wondering when they actually came to the conclusion that he could potentially play inside. Was it something that they thought of this year after the season? Is it something that they had been working on the entire time? all of those things are questions. At least for me, they're questions as to. So yeah, that's the biggest question for me. Like, when did they notice? Um, when did they notice that he had a chance to play guard as well? Um, Losing Jawan Taylor, there's a little bit of uncertainty about Cam Robinson. Also, I don't really know where it comes from, but I heard Trent Baalke at his press conference yesterday say someone asked him if Cam was going to be healthy. He already said they don't think Ben Barch is going to be healthy at training camp. But then somebody asked him about Cam Robinson. He says, will he be ready for training camp? He said, physically, yes. So I don't really know what that means. If it means that coming off of an injury, he has to be psychologically ready to go, or because if that's the case, that means it just means he's not ready. Okay. It's like you got to get in football shape, right? Is that what they mean? Is there something else going on that will keep Cam Robinson out? And if so, if you have multiple people on that offensive line that aren't ready to go, veterans, right? And then losing Taylor, that's three guys potentially that started at the beginning of last season, at least two, with the vague reference to Cam Robinson. I don't know what's going on there, but there's at least two guys we know, Jawan Taylor and of course Ben Barch. Now, even if that's two guys that didn't start, but even if you look at the end of the year, Cam Robinson wasn't there, Barch wasn't there, and Jawan Taylor wasn't there. So the offensive line, for the most part, appeared to protect Trevor really, really well. The one concern that I do have is depth, which they tried to address that in the offseason with a couple of signings with guys who had played NFL snaps, and overall talent. I think sometimes the line may have been protected a little bit with the quick passes. And I think that it seems like the passing game at times last year was sort of an extension of the running game. The 49ers made that a staple in the West Coast offense, and Doug definitely is a West Coast guy. I really believe that the schedule this year that we'll go over here in the third segment will call for them to actually have to do more. Now, they added Calvin Ridley, so they have a surefire downfield threat, a guy that could eat the entire route tree up, that I expect to have a huge year and to make things easier for Christian Kirk, as well as make things easier for Zay Jones. So all of it is extremely important, and there's a lot of things and a lot of moving parts to trying to figure out exactly what's going to happen. But one thing is for certain, and two things for sure, and that is number 72 is going to have to really, really step up. How can you go from having a solid unit to a great unit and having the C's all connect? Continuity, chemistry, what else do we call it? They have to have continuity, they have to have chemistry, they have confidence, cohesion, all of those words that we use to describe a good unit on the offensive line. How can you do that with a bunch of different moving parts? Well, we're going to figure it out, and I'll let you know in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Something exciting is coming to Built.com on April 22nd. I don't have all the details yet, but the excitement is real, and it's something you don't want to miss. You have to be there. If you know how Built works, they have the most incredible protein bars in the world, and they do things amazing with all of the flavors and the flavor drops and the unreal flavors in limited quantity. So mark your calendars and head to Built.com on Saturday, April 22nd to be one of the first to discover what all the hype is about. I can't wait to see what this new flavor is. Make sure to use the promo code LOCKEDON15. Now listen, it's Locked On 15 all together. Use caps and you'll get 15% off your order. They never disappoint. Built Bar, covered in 100% real chocolate, and is the greatest protein bar ever. All right, thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. We greatly appreciate it. Shout out to all my everydayers who tap into the podcast. I had to change my background here. So if you're on YouTube and you saw me switch that background, don't be tripping. You might see some people walking behind me, but that's all good. the Jaguars. We're going to discuss their record because we're going to set it up for our show that comes on later. Once we get into training camp, of course, we're going to talk about what we think and anticipate their record can be. I'm going to call it today that they're going to go at least 5-1 in the division. I'm going to look at all of the teams that they're playing, since we're talking about the offensive line and talking about the importance and how they have to actually be better. When you play better opponents, that's exactly what has to happen to you. So we're going to take a look at that. And you know why you play better opponents? Because you win your division. You win your division, you play better opponents. It's a chance the Jaguars' record might be close to what it was last year, but the team will be better. There's just a chance that happens. How do you go from a solid unit, but solid unit that's not great, to actually being a great unit? And I've really been harping on this lately because the expectations of this team changes. When the expectation changes, your approach has to change. The way you watch, the things that you used to put up with in the past and just absorb, and you used to, when you put up with it in the past and you absorb it, it was just all about optimism and hope, but looking forward to the future, looking at the big picture. Now when your expectation changes, game by game by game, I know teams that win a lot, championship type teams that win a lot. They'll win a close game and the team doesn't play well, and the fans really look morbid as if the team lost because their expectations are so high. I don't think we're quite there with the Jaguars. I think as long as the Jaguars win games and play very, very competitively, the fans will still be fine with that because of the long period of time they had losing. But one of the most critical parts of that is the offensive line and how they play, which is why I'm so hard on it. I didn't want them to get rid of Juwan Taylor. And I know everybody wants to talk about the money, but it's not my money. It's not yours either. And he's gone now. But maybe this will make you understand why I was fighting for him so much, because at some point I did want to see Juwan out there with Cam Robinson and Walker Little and Brandon Sheriff and Luke Fortner. I really wanted to see what it was like when they would finally be able to get what I consider their 5 best players on the field at the same time. Now they're having to make it up again. They got to find these guys that can play. It was a long time before they got real solid guys. And when you finally get it and you finally get it right and they let them go, they leave, and it's like, oh man. So if you're going to add an Osiris Torrance this year, or if you were going to add Anton Harrison or something, this would have been, in my opinion, the time to retain your guys and still add those guys, still add a Darnell Wright, still have a guy. So maybe a year or two down the line, if Cam came up in free agency and the line is still just above average, or if he got hurt again, you could move on without trepidation, and you would already have in-house that dude to just slide right in. So that process kind of went backwards for me. And that's just not where I wanted him to go, because as you all know, the biggest priority is to keep Trevor Lawrence upright and keep him healthy. And I know anything can happen to cause a quarterback to, have a high ankle sprain, or somebody rolls up on him in a pile and all of that stuff. That's bad enough. But now to have this little bit of uncertainty on the line is not really something that I expected going into the draft this year when the season ended. I was just thinking, how could they add more to it, not necessarily have to replace anything? So it's a little bit of a concern, but I do have confidence. So it's sunshine and rainbows time now. I do have confidence, and the confidence that I have is in Phil Rauscher. I think I've seen the way he works with linemen. His reputation is stellar. He, coached under one of the best who's ever done it in Bill Callahan. And I really like it. I really like something that Press Taylor said last year about Luke Fortner. He said, we were familiar with him because of the coach at Kentucky. They do a lot of the stuff that we do, and we have a great relationship. So therefore, we were able to get a guy we knew was going to come in and help us out and be able to play well. That's kind of stuff that you do when you have stuff in place and you have a standard and you have the same guy doing it over and over again. Because every time you switch coaches, and that's one of the things that we talk about. A lot of times you switch coaches a lot, like the Jags have. I think the Jags have 5 coaches in the last decade or something like that, right? Let me see. Gus Bradley. Yeah, well, 4, maybe 5 if you want to count When Shad bought the team, they had a coach, and then they got Gus, who was the second one, and then Marone was third. You know who was fourth, and now fifth. Yeah, so that's five. You can never really look. Football is football, but guys still have a way of doing things, and scheme changes. Sometimes there's a little slight scheme change, and you go from a zone blocking scheme to some power scheme, and everybody doesn't fit everything. Now, great players do. Trent Williams can play anywhere, right? Trent Williams can play anywhere. Guys like that, Larry Tunsil can play anywhere. But offensive linemen are super, super important. If you don't think they're important, I know Miami got a whole bunch of draft picks when they traded Larry Tunsil, but ever since they traded Larry Tunsil, they spent a lot of years looking for a left tackle, and then they had to spend big money to get Teron Armstead. So it's really critical when you get good players at those positions that you pay them and you keep them and you try to keep that unit together, man. There's nothing that can make a football team look bad more than a bad offensive line. It is something that I talk about all the time. And when you get a system in place and you get the right guy in place, you want to let him build his guys up, but you want to keep adding to it. And I just wonder if somebody, and this could very well be the case, so I'm not gonna say I heard this or anything. I just wonder if there's somebody that said, look, that kid ain't a $80 million player. I'm sorry. And if that's the case, so be it. We got to live with the decision. But the thing is there's just too many people that we have to replace now. And then there's uncertainty about two guys coming off. You got three healthy linemen that have played a lot of ball here for Jackson. Four if you include Tyler Shatley, but I'm not. You got a center. You got Scherf. We mentioned Fortinet center, Brandon Sheriff, and Walker Little. That's why Walker Little being a guy who can play multiple positions. He's not just a left or a right tackle. I thought those are the only things that he was, but now they're telling me he can play guard. So it sounds like to me he's the Swiss Army knife of that group. That's why I think this is a big year for him. It's year 3. He was not a first-round pick. There is no fifth-year option. So plays well this year, they're going to have to probably try to re-up him again, or they're going to be in the exact same situation they were with Juwan Taylor, and somebody's going to come in and outbid him. And by then, Trevor Lawrence will also be dancing with his extension probably, and Foye Oluokun and all of these other guys. And what do they do with Josh Allen and Tyson Campbell? We do, and ETN will be due. So it's critical, I think, that he plays well enough this year that they know what they have and they go ahead and extend him early at the end of this season. They have to, man, because you'll never get those seeds together if you keep letting guys go. I'll tell you about more in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. I have to also let you guys know about the Locked On NFL Mock Draft Special. It's here. Most of y'all know who I picked and how I got there and what I did. It's crazy. I told the NFL crew, the Locked On NFL crew, I was going to get killed. The night I make the pick, I said they're going to kill me because I know how the fans are when they fall in love with players, especially guys that are real good people. You never want them to leave, and I get it. But the Locked On NFL's Mock Draft Special is here, and it's bigger than ever. Follow along all 32 teams' first pick in a 6-episode ultimate mock draft experience only Locked On can deliver. All episodes are available now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Go look at the schedule, man, and see who those guys are going to have to block that's going to make this year so tough, and we'll do it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars. It's your man, Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen. Never fret, man, because your first and your second listen going to be heavy next week because we got it coming, man. We got all kinds of comprehensive draft coverage. We'll hit the rumors here on Locked On Jaguars, Locked On NFL, all the way around the network. Check out Locked On NFL Draft. Check out Draft Dudes, all of that stuff. Also, Locked On Podcast has a newsletter. Go to Locked On Podcast /newsletter. Make sure you check that newsletter out that comes out weekly. There's a lot of information in there, and guys don't pull punches. Guys and girls, they don't pull punches on it. They really, really, really hammer it home and come out with some strong opinions. And it is something that I look forward to every week, and I wanted to make sure that you were able to tap into that as well. We talked about Walker Little, how important it is, his versatility, the concern that some guys won't be available in training camp, how the loss of Juwan Taylor plus those things, the unhealthy guys coming back, how that makes Walker Little, who is their Swiss Army knife, their most versatile lineman, and right now the healthiest guy who can play outside, how he has to go from he has to take that step. Yeah, this is his third year. He has to take the step. This is a saying that people always say, just so they see what they have, right? In live games. Now you saw him a little bit at the end of last season. There was a lot of good, but there was some bad. It's not terrible like every play. Like I used to look at Luke Joker and I'm like, Luke Joker's horrible. He's awful, right? Luke Joker used to get pushed. I've never seen an offensive lineman have his shoulder blades touch the dirt and the grass with his legs up in the air more than Luke Joker. Luke Joker used to get steamrolled. I thought that was like my auntie or somebody. I'm being said. Guys used to just push him and he'd fall. And he's like, folks wonder who was the worst draft pick. To me, Luke Joker was the worst draft pick in the last decade. Worse than CJ Henderson and worse than Caleb Vaughn. He was. I'm sorry. And now that the Jaguars are getting better, their schedule is going to get better. Now it makes for interesting games. I can't remember who I used to talk to about that. Me and somebody used to go back and forth. It might have been Alfie Crow at Big Cat Country. We used to go back and forth. I don't care who they're playing. I'll go watch the Jags. I think it makes a difference. The atmosphere, I love a big time opponent. I love when those teams, those guys come in. I think it ratchets it up, ratchets up the atmosphere a little bit. There's nothing I like more and I love more than watching the Cowboy fans walk out of the stadium with their tail tucked between their whatever, and watching the Bills who came down. The Bills fans came down here, and you know what they did? When the Bills fans came down here, they ate all the chicken wings and drank all the beer everywhere. And then the other thing that they did is they had dirty trucks. I don't know why. Probably from the salt and the snow, but damn, you drove all the way from upstate New York. You probably passed 17,000 car washes and you couldn't clean your truck off. But it was nice to see them getting those dirty pickup trucks and get up out of here. The Chargers, we have this team now that's able, because of Trevor Lawrence and because of the high power at the skill positions, that's able to make every single game super, super competitive, even if it's a shootout, right? Of course, we got to get that defense to step up, but we got to make sure that the quarterback isn't running for his life. We got to make sure that these guys develop and they get some more help here in the draft. I really think they're going to go offensive line, in my opinion, because of the things that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to not just mention the home schedule. I'm going to talk about the away schedule. I'm talking about all these quarterbacks. I notice all of these quarterbacks, which means the defense has to play well. I'm not going to mention the 3 divisional games, even though I think they're going to go 5-1 at least at a minimum in the division. But when you think about the home slate that includes the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Bengals, and I know right there everybody was like, what? When I saw this, I couldn't believe it. And then they play the Ravens, the Panthers, who are going to fight and improve, and Atlanta. Now, I'm looking at the pass rushers for each one of those teams. Got people that can get after you. And I just saw a thing today. I didn't know Baltimore had like 48 sacks last year, right? And of course, you know about Brian Burns and Derek Brown and that crew. We know about Bosa and the guys up in Cincinnati, Hendricks, and then of course the Chiefs. Even though they let the guy go, but they still got a Hall of Famer right there. The Chiefs and the 49ers they have 2 Hall of Famers. That's a tough slate, especially for a team that has some questions. And then you look at the road games, the Steelers. You think TJ Watt ain't licking his chops? What about Von Miller up in Buffalo? Yeah. What about Myles Garrett? They play them too. They play Buffalo, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, the Saints. The Saints got any pass rushers? They got a Hall of Famer over there too, right? What about the Bucks? They got people that can get after you. They got people that can get after the quarterback. They got big dudes in the middle that got Vita Vea. They can get after the quarterback, right? This is a tough slate. Now I know it's like, bring it, we don't care, and stick your chest out and be like, we don't care, we're Jaguar, all of that stuff. You're right. I'm down with it. I'm down with it. Let's go. Let's line it up. Line that up. Line that thing up. But I do want to go into this game with strong offensive line play, depth. That's why Walker Little has to be him. He has to be him this year. That's a start. I'll go out on a limb and say I think he has to not just be able to play. I think he has to be their best offensive lineman. He has to be their best offensive lineman. We need 16 to stay upright, and we need 16 to believe he's going to stay upright. So he ain't bailing out of there. He ain't running. He's not leaving the pocket. That's how this team is going to be great. Walker Little, all eyes on you. Starting to make that man sound like he's Tupac or something. I'm not Tupac. I'm Tony Wiggins, but I'll be here every single day, every time giving you this podcast. Make sure you tap in, like the YouTube page, also wherever you get your podcast. Audio-wise, make sure you check every day to see and hear these episodes. Till tomorrow, till the next time, you guys have a nice weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Take care of each other. Be safe, and we'll see you next time here on Locked On Jaguars.